Clancy Pye is a singer and songwriter from the central west of New South Wales who has twice been a Toyota Starmaker Grand Finalist. She released an EP in 2020 and the single Feels Like Home last year. Her latest single is Drink About. I think she has a fantastic voice, great songs, hopefully more music on the horizon. I'm going to ask her about all of that. Hi, Clancy.
Hi, so thank you so much for having me on.
It's a pleasure, and I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you about your music because I have been a fan since you started releasing music in the rather inauspicious year of 2020. But I will take you back a bit before then because I believe you started playing guitar at the age of 6. So why was that the instrument you picked up at that age?
Yeah, it's I was really lucky to grow up in quite a musical family actually. So a lot of people probably know my older brother Mickey Pye, who of course plays guitar for Travis Collins. He won Toyota Starmaker a couple of years ago. But yeah, Mickey's 4 years older than me, and we have a sister as well. And we grew up on a farm just outside of Oberon in the central west of New South Wales, and I guess we were just really fortunate. I guess growing up, we kind of had music filtering in from both sides of the family. So on my dad's side, his father, he had a day job, but he actually was a fantastic drummer, and he played in a number of dance bands around Oberon on the Central West, which he did that every weekend. And unfortunately, he actually passed away of cancer a few years before my brother and I were born. But the greatest legacy that he left was he left behind all of his instruments to our family. So in the house growing up, we just happened to have a piano, a bass guitar, a bunch of guitars, a drum kit, which I guess not a lot of other families would have had the luxury of having that lying around the house. And then on my mother's side, she's one of 6 children who all grew up playing guitar. And my grandmother, she's now 88, and she plays piano, organ, harmonica, button accordion, and at the age of 88, she still goes around every week and performs. Entertains the residents at nursing homes, and she plays at church on Sundays. She's done that every Sunday for 50 years in Oberon. So I guess we were just surrounded by music growing up, and with guitars lying around the house. When we were kind of old enough to wrap our fingers around the fretboard, my mum would show us a couple of chords, and once we started learning a couple of chords, that was really enough to start learning to play songs. So I think just quickly, living out on a farm, and I guess we didn't have our friends just down the road to hang out with, so we spent a lot of time with each other. And I remember a lot of weekends and times when I was little where we'd listen to cassette tapes, and we'd write the lyrics out, and our mum would listen to it and write the chords above the words. And soon enough, we would just start learning songs and playing together. And we had a bit of a family band when we were younger as well. So, I think, probably because my older brother and sister were playing guitar, I wanted to be like them. Yeah, but it was nice to just dabble in lots of instruments as a kid. And that's probably where, my love of playing music first grew from.
Yeah, it sounds like you didn't have much of a choice, but I'm just interested. You said your mother wrote out the chords listening to a cassette, so clearly, like, she could pick by ear what she was listening to.
Yeah, and that's probably how a lot of our family members learnt to play is by ear, and I guess just playing with one another as well. Being able to kind of catch on and pick what key someone's playing in to be able to join along. So, for us too, that probably helped to develop our ear a little bit as well. And I think it was nice to, quickly when we started actually learning chords and how to strum, that pretty soon after that we were learning to play songs. 2 chords, 3 chords is kind of enough to start picking songs that we love to listen to on the radio and cassettes growing up. So that probably gave us a bit of an incentive to practice, because you'd kind of have that reward of being able to quickly learn to play a song. And and I guess, we would all, someone needed to sing as well. So naturally, probably singing came along with that. But that's sort of how we all got started.
I also love that your grandmother is 88, yet as you said, she's going around nursing homes.
And it's quite funny. I actually caught up with her the other day, and she told me, yeah, I just got home from going and playing for the old people, and I thought, well, if you're 88 and you're calling and the residents old people, yeah, I got a kick out of that.
Clearly, yes. One would imagine that going around and performing helps keep her young at heart and young of mind, no doubt.
Oh, 100%. And actually, my grandmother, Nancy is her name. Nancy and Clancy was, yeah, we'd often, people get a bit of a kick out of that.
Right.
But, even when I was young, she used to pull me out of school sometimes and go and play for the elderly residents for an hour or so during my lunch break at school. So I kind of watched her. She just plays music for the joy of playing music. She actually recorded just a CD to give away to some friends and whatnot last year. And I just thought, if you can be in your late 80s recording your first, album of covers
Yeah.
and still playing every week, and every single day she gets on the piano and plays a harmonica, because it makes her, it's what keeps her going. Music is one of the most important things in her life, and yeah, the joy that she gets from entertaining people probably rubbed off on all of us from a pretty young age.
I bet she is great company. She sounds wild.
Yeah, she's certainly, yes, very, probably quite extroverted in a lot of ways. I think I can almost be a bit the opposite, but yeah, she loves country music, and has been up to Tamworth for many years, and still listens to country radio every week. So yeah, she certainly was probably a big influence on us growing up as well.
So did you listen to quite a bit of country music growing up?
Yeah, it's we were fortunate growing up. We had a lot of influences. Country music was absolutely really strong. My dad was an interstate truck driver. He had his own truck, and used to drive interstate to Brisbane and Melbourne, and he owned pretty much every Slim Dusty cassette tape that he ever put out, and could pretty much, sing every Slim Dusty lyric. So we certainly grew up on a lot of Slim's music. And as well as that, we actually learnt probably to dance before we even picked up instruments. So myself and my siblings, we got into like 50s rock and roll dancing when we were toddlers and first starting school, and we used to go around and perform at events around sort of Bathurst and Lithgow in the Central West. So we were listening to things like Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee Lewis and all those great like 50s rock and roll type of music. And yeah, certainly as I got older too, and I started discovering artists like, Casey Chambers was probably one of the first albums I remember going into Bathurst with my $25, and and that CD, is one of my favorite of all time. So Casey was certainly a big influence on me, and artists like Becky Cole, Adam Harvey, Troy Cassadaly. It was a real golden era, in the 90s and early 2000s, in terms of like Australian country singer-songwriters.
Yeah.
And a great time for me. I was learning to play and sing, and was buying all of those albums. So they were the songs that I was learning to play pretty young, and performing them at country music clubs and street festivals and all sorts of things. But yeah, also grew up on a lot of the American country music as well. Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson, the Chicks, Shania Twain, of course. Yeah, so at home, we just on reflection, there would always be music playing. First thing in the morning, the radio would be on, and even catching the bus into town, we would be listening to commercial radio at the time too. So just sort of absorbing all different styles, and having an appreciation for all of it.
Yeah, and I'm also just reflecting on the fact that you said you did a lot of dancing when you were young, and your grandfather used to play at dances every weekend. And it's just making me think, live music was such a feature of I think a lot of life, city and country, because those dances used to happen, and there were musicians playing at them, and it often wasn't recorded music.
That's exactly right. Yes, I get told a lot of stories of Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, every single weekend. particularly around Oberon where I grew up, there's so many small villages within, 20, 30 Ks of each other, and they've all got an old dance hall,
Mhm.
which a lot of them you drive past now, and it is a bit sad because some of them are a bit dilapidated and neglected. But yeah, my grandfather used to go and play around all of those, and yeah, and a lot of the time it wouldn't even be songs that you'd sing along to. It was literally
Yeah.
just yep, for barn dances, pride of errands,
Yeah.
line dances. Yeah, so it's certainly would have been an amazing thing to experience.
So for you as a young dancer, and doing a lot of that, do you think that that actually helped prepare you to be a performer because you were used to moving your body in certain ways? All of that can sort of get into the muscle memory, I guess.
I think so. You probably, like on reflection, think about how that probably helped you to learn rhythm and, to be able to clap on the beat and stamp your feet in time. And I think that probably helped, with strumming your guitar,
Yeah.
and those sorts of things as well. So absolutely, yeah, we used to, if we weren't line dancing, we were doing rock and roll dancing, and yeah, my siblings and my parents are much better than me. I was probably a bit young at the time, but know enough to sort of fumble my way through still.
Right. And you mentioned playing at country clubs. So was that when you started performing? Although it sounds like in your household you were probably always performing in a sense in that the something was always happening, you're always playing. But your formal performing career, did that starting in those country music clubs?
Yeah, so I remember. So Bathurst was it's 45 minutes or so away from Oberon, so it's kind of our next biggest town.
Mhm.
And so we would go there. It used to be once a month they would host a country music club there, and that was probably where we first started playing regularly. My dad would jump on the drums, my mum would play bass guitar, I think, at the time, and my brother and I and my sister would jump on guitars and take turns in singing. So it probably just gave us something to practice up for. We'd try and learn a new set of songs for each set that we got to play at the country music club, and yeah, it was always a little bit of a challenge just to try and learn something new. But yeah, I would have been in probably year two or year three, around about then, when we were doing that pretty regularly, and then started playing a lot of little pub gigs and festivals and just any kind of community event, I guess. Growing up in Oberon, it was only a town of about 3,000 people, so there weren't a lot of musicians, so we would often get the call up if something was happening in town. And with our surname being Pye, I don't. Early on, I think it was one of my dad's mates. We might have played at his work Christmas party, and they started calling us the Party Pies. So that name kind of stuck with us for quite a
That's
few
actually really
years.
good.
Yeah,
Very
it's probably better.
catchy.
It's probably better than what we could have come up with, to be honest.
That's right. Well, if you and Mickey ever want to become a duo.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we could always reinvigorate that name down the track.
That's gold. But I'm also just thinking, this is all while you're happening while you're a child. So you kind of had a kid job on the weekends. It sounds like you went to school and you were a working musician on the weekends, or even middle of the week.
Yeah, yeah, it sort of happened that way, and it was never forced either. Like it was just something that we did, like to as a hobby at home of a weekend. A Saturday afternoon, we'd take our instruments down to the shed and sit by the fire and just play songs, and it was just a lot of fun to do that with your family and my extended family as well. Just really lucky to have lots of other musicians in the family, and it probably actually quite quickly became a job in a sense for me. I was earning a little bit of pocket money as a kid in primary school, doing a few busking gigs and that sort of thing. But when I hit high school, so I would have just turned 12. And my brother was 4 years older than me, and our school in Oberon finished at year 10, so he travelled into Bathurst to do his last 2 years, and it was there. He was in a class of 100 boys compared to 10.
Mm.
And so he really found his feet there. He met other musicians his age, which we just never had that experience in Oberon, I suppose. And you know, he was made friends with a great drummer and a fantastic bass player who we're still good friends with today. And we actually formed a country rock band called Stoked.
Right.
And
Good
yeah,
name.
and so yeah, yeah, we made a banner, we got a smoke machine, a lighting rig. It was a whole thing, and we started. Yeah, it was when I was sort of in year 7. Every Friday and Saturday night, we booked ourselves up. We started playing, you know, between 50 and 100 gigs a year.
My God,
Uh,
that's a lot,
yeah,
amongst
yeah,
other things. Yeah.
yeah, and I did that all through my high school years. You know, even when my brother went away to university, he'd come back home and we'd play gigs together. And um, at the time, I remember, you know, probably the first year or two, you could actually still smoke in pubs. So I think the rule quickly changed. But I remember coming home from gigs and your throat would be really dry and sore, and your clothes would be reeking of cigarette smoke, and you'd have spilt beer on your shoes. And you know, I was 12 or 13 years old at the time. But one thing that really taught me, you know, the 6 or 7 years that we were doing that, I guess, you know, it was my part-time job. My friends were working at McDonald's and Donut King and mowing lawns, and I was just lucky I was able to sing and play guitar and earn a bit of pocket money. But one thing it really taught me was, I guess, how to entertain a crowd. You know, it's one thing to be able to learn a few songs and play for little sets here and there, but when you've got people up on the floor and you're trying to keep them dancing, or just being able to read a room and try and respond to that with the songs that you're choosing to play, and yeah, to be able to get through that, you know, 3 or 4 hour gig and do it, you know, weekend after weekend. Not just the gig itself, but you know, setting up all the gear, carrying everything in, packing it in the car. Mickey and I would, you know, often have to drive an hour back home to Oberon, you know, at 2 o'clock in the morning, middle of winter, you know, frosty roads, snow. You know, we spent a lot of time together in his little van back in the day. And yeah, an interesting way to grow up. But I think musically, those years taught me a lot about music, and developed my appreciation for performing, whether it was literally to 1 or 2 people in the bar staff, or if you had a full room and it was a really really happening night, to just have an appreciation for it either way, and to come away just trying to have done the best gig that you could have done was all I was trying to do back then.
Well, there's that book that was written a while ago about, or essay, whatever it was, saying it's 10,000 hours doing something to become an expert. I think you and Mickey absolutely have more than ascended to expertise level.
I was going to say, and we're still not experts.
Well, I think that's arguable, but it does tell me quite a lot about how you developed your singing voice. And so, because you have such a great voice, and also the songs that were on your self-titled EP were not the songs of someone who had just suddenly decided to start recording music, you know what I mean? So I always like to find out this background around artists, because it helps me understand how you arrive at a certain place when you begin recording. So when you started to develop your singing voice, because obviously as a singer, there are influences from the music you're listening to. It's a natural inclination to mimic certain singers as you're deciding to sing, but how did you start to develop your own voice?
Yeah, and what you said there, in a lot of the artists you're listening to probably start to infiltrate your own voice. But interestingly, like I would sing a lot of songs by male singers, female
Okay.
singers, rock songs, country songs. You know, so I probably was singing quite a lot of different styles. And to be honest, I've never considered myself the most amazing vocalist, but I really love to sing.
Mhm.
And yeah, probably one thing that's always really stood out to me is the voices that come from singer songwriters. Probably in some way speak to me a little bit more, because you know that they're the words, you know, they're singing the words that they've essentially written. And yeah, that's probably why artists like Casey Chambers and Becky Cole and the Chicks and those sorts of artists that, you know, came from quite a musical background and wrote their own songs, probably always just sort of stuck out with me a little bit more. But yeah, it's certainly something that I'm always trying to develop and to learn to look after my voice a bit more. I think back in the day, you got no technique, you're just going as hard as you can for 3 hours, 3 or 4 hours, but you quickly learn that you do have to look after it to be able to have some form of longevity. But is interesting to hear your voice change over time too. I've got a few cassette recordings from when I was a kid, and I don't know how my mum didn't cut me off and let me get up on stage. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to listen to, but to be up and giving it a shot, when you're young, I think counts for something.
You're probably your own harshest critic. It is really hard to listen to your own voice, I think. And she could obviously hear the potential. Let's put it that way.
And I guess, yeah, it is a bit hard to shut down your daughter, isn't it, when she's trying her hardest.
Well, and again, she would have heard the potential. Now, your 2020 EP was self-titled, and it contained the song Heaven Can't Wait, which has had almost 300,000 streams on Spotify alone, I saw, and tens of thousands more on social media. Why do you think that song has connected so much with people?
Yeah, it's really interesting. The response I got after that song, I honestly wasn't expecting. But I'd kind of written songs for a reasonable amount of time, but I'd never kind of written anything that I felt compelled to record. I was always just wanting to keep working on it until I felt I had some songs that I felt might make people feel something, and have a message in there to help other people. And this song, when I wrote it, it actually was probably the kick that I needed to go and record an EP. Yeah, I think growing up in a small town, I'd had a lot of family friends that we'd unfortunately lost way too soon, and I think anyone that's gone through that experience of losing a loved one before their time should have been up. It's just something that you never get over. And I was just kind of reflecting on, all of those people that I knew, and just wanted to write something that I guess expressed how I could only imagine their own friends and family feeling. There's that saying that only the good die young, and sometimes that's the only explanation that you can give. And I wanted to just kind of go with that sort of idea, I guess, and put it into a song. Just ironically, the day that we recorded that song, I got a phone call from my sister that a family friend of ours had been killed in a truck accident, and he left behind, a beautiful wife that we were also friends with growing up, and 4 young kids, toddlers and in primary school. And it was just one of those things that it was just ironic that it happened at that time, and it really affected me. And when it came to releasing that song as a single, I was just really drawn to make a music video to go along with it. I guess just to pay tribute to a lot of the people that inspired that song, and to know that they live on and they're not forgotten. And I was really lucky to have a lot of the families that I wrote the song essentially about contribute photos and videos. And I worked with Jay Sini of Blacklist Productions. Came out to Oberon, and we filmed and put it all together. And I think in some ways just having those real life images going along with the lyrics that I'd written probably just elevated that that story a little bit more. And yeah, when I released it, it honestly had a reaction that I wasn't expecting. I think it went to #1 on the iTunes country chart, and it had about 100,000 views, that video, within the first 3 or 4 days, I think it was. And it probably just showed me that some of those things that are the hardest to say and to put into songs are probably the things that impact you the most. And I've certainly got songs that when I hear them, even to this day, they still make you kind of well up and feel something. If it's got a message that sort of pulls at the heartstrings a little bit, and has that realness to it, I suppose.
Now, since that EP, you have, in fact, written at least 150 songs. I was reading during the song club that Sam Hawksley was running over the pandemic, and that's an extraordinary figure because I'm pretty sure it didn't go for 150 weeks, which I know it was one song a week. But what was
Yeah.
it about that song club that helped you to be so productive?
Yeah, it was honestly that was probably a real turning point with my songwriting. Funnily enough, Sam Hawksley, who a lot of people would know Sam from playing guitar in the Star Maker band, and I've been friends with him for a couple of years, and we were chatting at the Golden Guitars in 2020, actually just before the pandemic hit, and he was telling me about the song club that he'd been involved in Nashville. Basically, it's a group of about 10 writers at a time that are connected via an email thread. And basically, Sam would send us out a prompt each week, which could have been a word or a phrase, just to get us thinking. And the only rule of the group is that we had to submit a song by midnight on Thursday every single week, or you were out of the group, or you got one strike and you were out. And that was by no means to be harsh or, to overwhelm you. It was just literally to give you that bit of a forced,
Mhm.
external deadline to work towards, and to keep consistent, keep flexing that muscle and keep doing it. There's so many weeks where you don't feel like sitting down to create, that you don't have time to do it. But over that sort of 2 or 3 years, I just forced myself every week to make time, regardless of what I had going on. And regardless of if I had 20 minutes or, a whole day to sit down and put a bit more time into something. But yeah, I just got in that process of submitting a song every week, regardless of the quality of that. And it just taught me to not roadblock ideas. I think at times I would kind of get partway into a song and stop writing it because I felt it wasn't going anywhere. And, you'd get a bit disheartened and not come back to it. But Song Club just made you write that song a week, pop it into your hard drive. And I was sort of trying to categorize them into terrible, okay, maybe, but it's amazing that after doing that over a few years, and I ended up with about 150 or so songs to choose from when I decided to go in and start recording an album. To go back and listen to all of those songs that a lot of them I even forgot about, and to think, oh, actually that might have a bit of potential, or to get a second pair of ears as well, because I didn't show a lot of these songs to many people until we started choosing songs for the album. So yeah, it's actually rewarding in some ways to go back and have a listen to what you've created over that time. Even if no one listens to them, I think it's like anything. The more you do something, the easier that process gets, and probably the better the quality of the songs that you produce naturally get as well. I think you often hear athletes talk about getting into that flow state, when they just feel things come easily. And that probably applies a bit to songwriting too. The more that you're doing it, things come a little bit easier than if you're only doing it sort of once in a blue moon.
Mhm. That song club certainly has had a huge impact, I think, on Australian country music because Ashley Dallas hit a purple patch because of that song club. And of course, it brought Felicity Urquhart and Josh Cunningham together. But sounds like
Absolutely.
you wrote the song Drink About during Song Club, which is your latest single. What is the story behind it?
Yeah, it's Drink About was a really fun one to write, actually, and it came out quite quickly. I guess I've grown up singing a lot of country drinking songs since I was quite young, and they certainly always get a great response from the audience. So yeah, I guess I'd grown up listening to like a lot of Brad Paisley, Toby Keith, of course, who was sadly passed away just a week or two ago. And so I've always had an appreciation for those types of songs. Always wanted to put my own spin on a drinking song, and I think we've all got those friends in life that you might only get to see them, every so often. And when you've left it a bit too long between drinks and you finally get a chance to catch up, there's often so much ground to cover, so many things to talk about, that you find yourself reaching for literally any form of alcohol, you've got to keep up with that conversation, and there's often not near enough to keep up with everything that you've got to get through. So that was kind of the idea for this song, and I just wanted to take a kind of light-hearted, fun approach to that, and create something that hopefully people could sing along to and dance along to and enjoy.
Yeah, and it's not a maudlin drinking song at all. It is an upbeat song because it is about, as you said, celebrating. Actually, what it really celebrates is connecting with people, because the chorus line is there's a lot to drink about. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's it. And I think, a lot of life happens sometimes between catch ups with your good mates. So for worse or for better, yes, I think there's always a lot of things that we've got to get off our chest. And I think we've got to give ourselves permission to let our hair down every so often, and not care too much about how you might feel the next day.
Now, you mentioned an album, and this song and Feels Like Home are from the upcoming album. Have you thought about a release date, or are you still in the planning stages?
Yeah, so my plan this year is I've got a couple of songs that I would like to release as singles this year before I sort of dump the full album. So there's a couple more songs that I'll be releasing this year, and then it'll likely be early next year that we'll release the full project. And yeah, it's something I'm looking forward to getting out there. I think every song on this album certainly has a very different flavor to it, and probably is a bit of a reflection of the variety of songs that I was writing over the last couple of years. And yeah, experimented with lots of different styles, and I just really wrote for the enjoyment of it too. Wasn't really thinking about anything other than just trying to write the best song I could. So yeah, I think this is probably just a reflection of those couple of years, and creatively how inspired I was.
Now, a little while ago, you referred to athletes as if you weren't one. You talked about them in the third person. You said, I think athletes get into that flow state. But
Yeah.
Clancy, you too are an athlete, because you recently ran a 22-kilometer event, which suggests to me that you must do a fair bit of running, because you don't do that from a standing start. So
I certainly, it's about a once in a year effort for me. I'm certainly not a seasoned athlete, but yeah, the last couple of years I've been trying to do sort of a half marathon each year as a bit of a fundraiser for an organisation called FAST. Which stands for the Foundation of Angelman Syndrome Therapeutics. And I have a 5-year-old nephew who was diagnosed with Angelman syndrome a couple of years ago. It's quite a rare genetic disorder, so it affects about 1 in 15,000 people, and unfortunately, it does leave them with quite severe impairment. So most people with Angelman syndrome are nonverbal. They suffer from epilepsy and have a lot of issues with movement. So, walking and coordinating their movements, eating, sleeping are all really affected. So yeah, it's just an organisation that are really proactive in supporting medical research into that condition. And I just think, again, it's probably similar to the songwriting club in a way, is small efforts over a long period of time, add up to something a bit greater. So I just try and set myself that goal every year of, even if it's only raising a couple of $100 or a couple of $1,000, over years, it's certainly adding up to a bigger contribution to that organisation. And keeps me fit as well. I try and do it towards the tail end of winter in Orange, because it's a bit nasty getting out at 6 o'clock in the morning to run in July or August in Orange. So yeah, it gives me something to work towards as well.
well, there might be some snow or ice on the roads at that time of year.
Certainly, I think when it gets below -1 degrees, it's certainly a little bit harder on your lungs to get out and train. So I try and save the half marathons for the warmer months, that's for sure.
I would imagine the fitness also helps you with your gig fitness, because, of course, I remember hearing a long time ago, singing takes more muscles than running. So
Oh,
it is.
there you go. Maybe I can give up running.
But on the subject of gigs, will you be playing any gigs in support of this single, or are you going to wait till you have the album out?
Yeah, so we actually did a little bit of a single launch party back in Oberon on the day of the release of Drink About, which was really fun. And I'm looking forward this year to actually doing a few more ticketed shows, which I'm planning for the next couple of months. Certainly, when it gets to the point of releasing my album, yeah, I'd love to be able to do a couple of shows in support of that as well. But I'm just really excited to have more of my own music, to be able to travel a bit wider with, and one thing I love about festivals like Tamworth is you get to meet people from all over the country, and yeah, and slowly sort of widen your fan base that way too. So yeah, for anyone to have a listen to my songs and enjoy them and get something out of them is the reason I do it. So as much as I can connect with them, the better.
Well, the song is Drink About. There are more songs coming, as you've said, and an album to look forward to. But it's been so interesting speaking with you. So thank you very much for your time, and hope to speak to you again at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure to talk to you as well. Thanks for having me on.